Oh, that's so hard to ask a horror fan.
No.
Damn, that's tough. That's tough.
Hello.
I would
Do you
say,
want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Welcome, everyone, as Jamie gives you all of the hearts.
That
Gen
turned
A
into the
through
Itsy Bitsy
Z.
Spider.
Oh, Itsy Bitsy Spider. Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Oh!
Yeah, not,
What-
sorry, podcast, not a visual medium.
I'm
Good stuff.
screaming. Yes. Well, we're just like reeling excited because today, oh, so fun. We got the opportunity to chat with writer, director, producer Stuart Ortiz about his new movie coming up, Strange Harvest, coming out August the 8th. It was an exciting time. We are fans of his from Grave Encounters, and it was so awesome to be able to talk to him and chat about his love of horror, but also just everything Strange Harvest. But before we get into that full blown conversation, just so that you can have some premise, producer Brian is going to give us a little bit of a plot summary for this movie.
Yeah, sure.
What's the plot?
So, this is not your typical plot. What's it about? Because we're not going to spoil anything about this movie.
Exactly.
But essentially, detectives are thrust into a chilling hunt for someone named Mr. Shiny, a sadistic serial killer from the past who return marks the beginning of a new wave of grotesque otherworldly crimes tied to a cosmic dark force. This is done like documentary style, and we were able to see it early so that we can chat with the director and writer Stuart Ortiz. And it's a really great time. I'm excited for everyone to see this thing.
And that's the plot.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Absolutely. But for those of you, just as a reminder, hi YouTube.
Hi.
You can this is Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha. You can also find us on social media at Talk Horror Pod, wherever you're on social media, and by that I mean just TikTok and Instagram. So you can find us there. We do all kinds of rankings and we review other movies that we don't talk about on the podcast. And if you're listening to us for the first time, we've got hundreds of episodes that you can listen to. Each episode, we break down a movie and talk about it through the lens of mental health and human behavior. As was previously mentioned, I'm just double downing on that. But thanks so much for joining us, and we really, really appreciate you.
Woo.
Woo woo.
All right, and here is our interview with Stuart Ortiz. Enjoy, guys.
Take it away, us.
Welcome, everyone. It's a super exciting time today. I'm about to burst out of my seat because we are here with the one and only Stuart Ortiz, who is, if you don't know, Grave Encounters, one of the writers, directors of that incredible found footage movie. But we're here specifically to talk about his new movie that is coming out August 8th called Strange Harvest. Please welcome Stuart Ortiz. We are so glad to have you. Thank you so much.
hey everybody.
Woo! So we just want to start off because, of course, we're going to get into everything that is Strange Harvest, but no spoilers like we usually do. We want to keep you on the edge so that we can get your butts in the theaters to see this incredible movie. So we want to start off with just something light and ask you, what is your favorite horror movie? Or if you want to talk about your subgenre favorite, please let us know.
Oh, that's so hard to ask a horror fan.
No.
Damn, that's tough. That's tough. I will address it in a found footage and then non-found footage, I suppose. And
Great.
granted, I feel like probably for all horror fans, you included, it can shift depending on the day or the week, probably,
Totally.
or
Mm-hmm.
like how you're feeling or whatever. But I usually go with, for myself, Dawn of the Dead, 1978 is probably the biggest horror influence I've ever had in my life.
Mm,
Something about that film I saw when I was in high school, and it just hit me hard. Some combination of, Romero's commentary that he was putting into this movie was really, I thought, just I hadn't seen a horror movie that tried to inject actually some other element, some kind of commentary about the real world that was going on. And that just really
absolutely.
affected me when I saw the film. So much so that I basically forced my dad to take me to that mall out by Pittsburgh. I live in Southern California, but I forced him. He was like, "What are we doing? Why are we doing this?" I was like, "Oh, I got to go to the mall." So I got to go to that mall, and it was cool because, like, I think actually I heard that mall is maybe getting torn down, which is a shame.
Oh,
Oh
Oh.
I could be
no.
wrong on that, so I'm not
Hmm.
100%. But like, I think the mall kind of got discovered eventually, that, like, Dawn of the Dead and zombies in general became very popular. But back then, nobody knew what it was at all, and like no one had
Hmm.
heard of it.
Mhm.
And we literally convinced some security guard there to take me like into the back of the mall and like on the roof and stuff. Like it was like just one of those
Oh,
amazing trips.
Wow.
So that movie on the I guess cinematics side is probably the biggest influence for me. And then
sure.
I would probably say on the fan footage side, Blair Witch Project, still for me.
mm,
I mean, I saw it at the
Hmm.
perfect time. I was the perfect age, like for the
Hmm.
marketing campaign that they did. Like
yes.
I don't know if you remember the marketing campaign. Like,
Sure do.
We are
Yeah.
fellow
Hmm.
millennials. We
okay,
understand. We
okay,
got
good.
you.
Yeah.
We're
Oh,
with you.
yeah.
The same page then, yeah. So yeah, you know how impactful that kind of was to discover that on the early days of the internet, and how genius it was, and just I don't know, it's just one of those lightning in the bottle movies that to me is so perfect. And the thing that I think is often overlooked with that movie is, people talk about it in kind of, I don't know, people don't give it enough credit for how clever the mythology is, and like how
Absolutely.
realistically it's portrayed. I mean, the performances, the acting, like it's so raw and it's so real. And it's always my North Star in terms of movies when I just am like, what am I trying to really capture here? What am I going for? And I'll throw that on and be like, this is it. This is so realistic. Like,
Hmm.
it's almost inscrutable in a way.
So,
So
Yeah.
those two movies.
so on that note, we have a conversation here in Talking Horror about mockumentaries versus found footage movies. Like some movies we casually call them found footage, like a Hell House LLC or something like that. When like it's technically, I guess, a mockumentary with found footage like woven in. I guess
Right.
in your head, do you have a distinction between the two, especially because Strange Harvest is so geared towards one but includes found footage in it? Like,
Right.
do you define that subgenre in a specific way in your head, or is it delineated in that way, or does it depends on the movie and the context?
I mean, it's delineated. I think they're two separate things depending on what you're doing, I suppose. Found footage is like kind of one thing, and then you have a documentary, which is a kind of a totally different format. A documentary is a constructed thing that's meant to put together and kind of tell this story of events that happen. Found footage is usually kind of trying to be in the immediate. You're going into the house, you're going into the scary place, and we're with the characters. I think mock docs can have found footage elements. Strange Harvest certainly has found footage
Hmm.
elements,
Hmm.
but I definitely see a distinction because I think the storytelling formats are different and can lean into different strengths. Found footage very much has the immediacy. It almost breaks down the fourth wall where you're just like there and you're experiencing the story. Documentary is more like, it's framing these events in kind of a linear way to tell the story. And it can include found footage, but it can also include interviews. It can
Hmm.
include other things as well. But I definitely see a distinction. I think if there is not a huge line that's been drawn in the sand yet, I just feel like it's because there's not a ton on the documentary side, on the mock doc
Sure.
side. I mean, what do you
Hmm.
really have? You got Poughkeepsie tapes,
Yeah.
Lake Mungo, like you were saying, Hell
Hmm.
House has elements, and other films have
Hmm.
elements, but there's just not a ton of them, I think. I hope
Totally.
that there will be more because I
Yeah,
love the format myself.
Hmm.
definitely.
Yeah, and just to add to that, since you said you love the format, um, do you think that that will be the thing that you will continue to do as a filmmaker is go into that genre because there is a lack of it? I know you mentioned your love of horror movies was due to the commentary, but now as a filmmaker, it seems like you do lean towards more of a mockumentary or a found footage style. Do you think that's something that you'll just continue on in the future?
Yeah, not solely, I think, because I do
Yeah.
want to do more like standard narrative cinematic films as well. But I love, I love found footage. I love mock doc. I love the lo-fi nature. I think goes hand in hand with horror really, really well. I mean, you could have the same image of like some demonic face. And if it's in pristine, beautiful Arri Alexa, well lit with a backlight and all that, it's going to have one effect versus the shot on, 8 millimeter video, has no lighting. To me, that version is always scarier because it's just more raw looking. And you can see it in some ways
Mhm.
there's less fidelity. And to me, it's always like the less you see, the better. And I think that's
Mm.
what I think found footage is and mock doc too, is the footage itself tends to be grainier and you can't see it as well. So more is left to your imagination. And then certainly with the documentary format, because of the nature of a documentary, they don't always have all the information. You get a certain amount of things, but sometimes information is simply left out because it's not available. And that's just is a beautiful thing for horror. And I try to play with that in Strange Harvest. And
Yeah.
in fact, start the movie with the mission statement, basically having the detective say, we don't have all the pieces of this puzzle, we don't know everything. And that to
Hmm.
me is intriguing. I think that's one of the things that's cool that you can do in this kind of style of movie that's harder to get away with not answering things when you're in a more cinematic movie, I think.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
absolutely. And I will
Yeah.
say, as someone who has recently watched Grave Encounters, I know this is not a Grave Encounters podcast that we're talking about, but I just have to bring up the fact that you mentioned of not knowing the information. And that was one of the things that I loved about the first Grave Encounters is that you don't get all of the information, but you still feel satiated in the story that you are given with the found footage. So I just appreciate you making that point because it really does come through with how you direct and write your movies as far as that's concerned. So it's great.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I think the devil is in the details. So,
Hmm.
I think when I'm working with Colin or by myself, it's just always about trying to flesh out the world and create just a good world building because world building is so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, let's get into Strange Harvest a little bit more. I think the world building there is fantastic. I think a lot of the exposition and really getting people into the mindset of where you want them to go. I just think that you captivated me as we watched through that. Um, but I guess you know, how I want to talk about the format of it because we've been talking about the format a lot about in general. I guess like when you were developing this, you've mentioned that you love true crime. I guess where did you start with the inkling of this idea, in terms of like putting this together for yourself and the way you wanted to structure it with the police officers, as well as the other people? Like where did that germ come from?
I mean, I feel like the movie is just a Frankenstein monster of like my own interests and then just like it felt like the right time and place to tell that story combined with it being a perfect vehicle for doing something low budget. I think the idea, I mean, is present even in Grave Encounters and probably before that and stuff I had done in terms of the love of mixed media, of like talking about the format of this documentary approach. I always love that. I think it's just a really interesting way to look at a horror story. And that had been floating around. And then when I heard about Poughkeepsie tapes, I was so intrigued in that movie. And that movie was like a weird mystery. Like it was announced, but it never came out. And then it was going to be remade or something. And that didn't happen. And finally it came out. And I love that film. But I also looked
Hmm.
at that movie and was like, I'd like to do my own version of this, basically. And then, the thing that happened is the pandemic happened, and then Tiger King came out,
Mm.
and that's a great, great entertainment. It's so funny to me, that documentary, and that really captured everyone's imagination. But it occurred to me when it came out, Tiger King is a true crime story at its core. I mean, it's a true crime show,
Yeah.
documentary. It has all this ridiculous stuff, and I think people kind of forget just because of how hilarious that guy is and how much of a
Hmm.
character he is. But it is a true
Hmm.
crime story, that's wrapped up in murder and all this craziness. And it just kind of, I had thought that true crime was too niche to have some kind of like, because I just thought that the format was not going to be understood. Like people wouldn't understand what I was trying to ape off of. And then, but once I saw that, I was like, no, true crime is everywhere. It's huge. It's like ubiquitous now. Like everyone likes true crime. It's not just the weirdos like me that like these stories of murder and mayhem, but like it's gone mainstream and like now grandma and soccer moms are enjoying true crime as well. So it all kind of was just like, and then it was combined with always seeking the low budget idea. And in my mind, I was like, I think I could make this work. I think I could present something that looks like it has more money than it does, simply because I can shoot parts of it, like the interviews, very professionally in a way that look
Yeah.
acceptable. And then the rest of the footage can look like crap, basically, and be super amateur in a lot of ways. And that just is fine because that's the nature of what it is. It's a documentary. So that's what the material would actually look like. So it seemed like the perfect project that you could lean into your low budget and use it as an asset instead of a detriment.
Well, I think that the performances by the quote talking heads, I think are perfect. In that like they really capture this like I'm a cop who's never really been on camera before, but like I know I'm an expert at this. And I thought that that was very believable. And to me, when that's not believable, it kind of pulls me out. But for Strange Harvest, that's what pulled me in, outside of the gore and the mystery of it all, for sure.
Yeah, and that's just really comes down to casting is everything. I mean, if the like you're right, if the everything else in the movie could be same, but if those two lead roles were not believable, if it felt phony, the movie doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't work. So I just was really lucky. We cast for a long time, and this movie was made non-union, and so we weren't working with a union, which
Oh,
can
wow.
make it more difficult because especially in that particular age range, it's kind of this range where it's like, unfortunately for a lot of adult actors, if you haven't made it by the time you're that age, it's probably because you're not that great per se.
Sure, sure.
It's always easy to find like non-union like people in their 20s. You
Exactly.
know, there's just a bazillion of them, right? But when
Hmm.
you're trying to find that specific thing of like you know, detective in their 50s or whatever, um, it's just harder because like if the actors are good in that range, they usually work themselves their way up. We were just really lucky in that I found an actor in the lead, Peter, who plays the male detective.
Hmm.
Um, he is had just gotten into acting. He's actually like a very successful music producer who just kind of decided he wanted to pursue acting and had only been doing it for like less than a year when I cast him. And then Terry, the female officer, her main thing is she has been doing voiceovers for most of her career, and then she decided she wanted to get into acting, and she'd only been doing it for not that long on the other side of the camera. So I just got really lucky and found two
Hmm.
people who were really talented and were just kind of starting their own careers, and it's just one of those things like you know it when you see it. And like I remember seeing
Hmm.
Terry's tape, and it was probably the worst tape technically. Like some of them, you get tapes sent to you and they look like this. They're all, you know, someone's got a ring light and it's well lit and it sounds good. Terry's wasn't like that. It was like in a bathroom on the floor. You couldn't see anything.
Oh,
And but
wow.
I could just tell, I could just see how great she was, even within that. And yeah, it was just like once I found the two of them, the movie worked after that. I knew
Yeah.
that we would be okay, or I hoped we'd be okay.
Well,
Yeah.
Nikisha is an actress, so we hear all of her tape stories all the time.
But it's
Yeah.
actually comforting to know that a tape setup could not be the best, but the talent can still shine through. And if the director sees something in that person, they're still able to grab them from that. So that is
100,
comforting.
100%, 100%.
Uh,
Absolutely. Go ahead, Brian. We're gonna say
oh,
something.
and then Jamie is a licensed social worker
Yes.
therapist. So we usually have a section on our podcast called Brains. Where we talk a little bit about the human behavior and mental health stuff. And I know that Jamie brought some questions for you when it comes to that corner of the world.
Yeah. So you'd mentioned Tiger King is like one of the influences and inspirations for creating this film. And you kind of talked about how true crime has really blown up in this like wild phenomenon of like everybody loves true crime. Um, I'm curious about like what do you think is so captivating about the true crime genre, and also like for you in particular, like what do you find so interesting?
Well, I think, true crime is interesting. It's so popular, yet so much of the material in true crime is so horrific, and it's curious that so many people, really gravitate towards it. And I think there's something about this sort of format of looking back typically on a crime that's happened in the past, where you have context, you have experts weighing in, you have a storyteller telling you, the order of events, but it's almost always after the crime has happened and the person has been caught or has come to justice on some level, or there's a resolution of some sort. Um, and I don't know, I think it helps people that might otherwise not have the stomach for this kind of material. It kind of holds your hand through it, and it kind of,
Mm,
because it can often give you that context of these things happened in the past, but they've been dealt with, and
Hmm.
here's also an explanation of what happened, and to some extent maybe what the person was thinking, what their motivation was. I think it just creates this kind of safe space. I know from talking to some of my female friends that they've said, that they love true crime, they love the most gory thing, but that they wouldn't necessarily want to watch that in a film. But
Hmm.
if they can watch it in a true crime format, um, it's somehow more tolerable. And I think that was kind of the philosophy with the movie going in, is that I wanted to bring some really horrific imagery, really go somewhere dark with it, but that if it was presented in a more like Saw or something like that, it would just be too gratuitous. But that
Sure.
wrapping it in this kind of, comforting documentary where you have these people talking you through it could make it palatable.
Hmm. No,
Sure.
it's really interesting. And like I definitely think that there's something to mitigating anxiety around like this happened already. Like we're not dealing with it right now. But also you were mentioning like, in storytelling, like leaving some things open-ended and like how that might in some ways create more anxiety because there are loose ends, there are things that are unknown, and that I think adds to the disturbing nature of things of the film. I'm also curious because you mentioned like, there's some grotesque and gory things that you're capturing. How do you protect your mental health when you're kind of exposing yourself to all of these things and like thinking about them and like really just enveloping yourself in a lot of pretty sensitive materials?
I think just not forgetting to laugh and trying to not take it too seriously, especially when you're shooting it and stuff, like we have some intense scenes. We have a scene that involves a sort of home invasion where a young woman is attacked by this guy. And when you're doing those scenes, you're working with the actress, you're trying to channel some real shit and get there in a place that feels authentic. And to do that, you kind of have to, depending on the actor, go into a certain headspace, a certain zone. And I tend to find the best way to do that is just try to keep the set very chill. I'm not a director that yells. I don't raise my voice. I try to work with a team of people that I respect what they bring. They, are respecting what I'm doing. And I think you just try to keep it light, because if you really dwell into it too much, it can get too heavy.
Hmm.
So I think just, having a good team of people with you and keeping light, finding levity in it, because obviously, I'm unfazed, I think, but I'm just a crazy person. These ideas, and then I'm elated. I'm so excited to get everyone to come on board. But I'm sure
yeah.
for everyone else, and one thing comes to mind is like there's another scene in the film where a body is hanging in a very public location, and it
Mm,
Hmm.
has some extreme graphic gore involved. And like that's a situation where the actual scene in the film, I think, is horrific and disturbing as it should be. But shooting that is like, was funny because we had a permit, but we couldn't shut anything down. So you have like mom and her kid walking by, or someone walking the dog walking by, taking photos and stuff.
Yeah.
You can be like, "Oh, take this seriously," or you can just laugh. And I just think it's you got to have fun when the fake blood comes out. You got to have fun. It's the way to get through some of the dark subject matter, and also just the inherent difficulty of making any indie movie.
Yeah, I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna put that on a t-shirt. When the fake blood comes out, you gotta have fun. I love that. But also just speaking on that, now that we're on the subject of some of the gore in the movie, I would love to hear about your process as far as using prosthetics in this, because I will say it's amazing. There are some other scenes that I don't want to spoil, but the way that you use prosthetics, I just want to know, did you already know what you wanted to do going in, or was it a collaborative effort when you got with your team and it kind of developed as things were starting to be filmed?
I think I had most of the ideas as far as the murders. I had them figured out pretty well. Then it
Mm,
was just a matter of trying to capture that. And one of the things we did with the movie is even though we had a very low budget, normally you kind of allocate all your different departments accordingly. That would be how it
mm,
usually makes sense. But when we made the movie, it was more like we gave a huge sum of money, more money than makes sense towards the makeup department because I just
nice.
having made a few films, I know how expensive these things can be, and
Hmm.
it was just really important to me that the movie, other than the performances, it's going to kind of ride or die on if these makeup effects work. So we
Sure.
kind of spent the money where it mattered, which was really what you see on screen, and part of that was getting this makeup effects artist named Josh Russell, who's I don't know why he did our movie. He was way out of our league, but he did like the Ritual, and he
Mm,
did like the recent Hellraiser. He did the Cenobites in it.
mm,
And yeah, he just is is super professional. And I said, I want dead bodies that, one of my inspirations was The Ring. There's a body that in the closet in the movie. I
Oh
don't know what
yes.
I'm talking about.
Yep.
It's an effect that Rick Baker did for a corpse. And I still think
Oh,
it's one of
wow.
the best corpses we've gotten in movies. It's just
I
so fucked up looking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
You know what
it
I'm
is a
talking about,
it is
right?
a oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
it's that moment is like millennial burned into my
Seared into
brain.
my, yep, into my
Yes.
Yeah, like
skull.
100%.
Pure nightmare
Hmm.
fuel. So that was kind of the
Yes.
reference I used is let's make him look kind of like that. And then
Hmm.
I showed up on the day and I was just like, beautiful, beautiful work, Josh. This looks totally fucked up. And then you're just, the thing that was funny about the movie is usually you spend all this time setting up your scenes and then all this time shooting your scenes, lighting, blocking, and all that. Our movie was only half of that. It was spending all the time setting everything up and then like 20 minutes shooting it, which
Mm,
really just amounted to taking photos and like walking through with like a handy cam, basically.
Mm,
Um, it felt criminal sometimes. You're like, we have these beautiful setups. We should light these, and these would look amazing on like, an Ari or something like that. But it was just
hmm.
like they're crime scenes. They need to look as lo-fi and crappy and awkward as they can be. But yeah, back to the makeup though, is just spending the money where it matters and having a really talented guy. I never forget going to his shop and be kind of sussing out if he was going to be down with our plan to do this low budget kind of thing. And I was like, well, we have some pretty brutal murders. We have like a murder of like a child. And he was like, oh yeah, I've got a bunch of bodies of dead kids. That's no problem at all. I've got a bunch back there. And I was like, I think I think we found our guy.
good to go. That's incredible. Brian, did you have another question about the movie?
Yeah, it's maybe more about the filmmaking, and you mentioned something in your last comment that got me thinking. Like, in the process of, evolving as a filmmaker, is there something that you deployed on this film that you feel like you hadn't previously, that you learned kind of through the process of filmmaking? You had mentioned kind of like the allocation of budget to makeup, but was there anything else that you feel like you're super proud of that you were able to do on this film that you maybe didn't know before, or that you maybe even discovered and created on this film?
Um, I mean, I guess there were certain things we did that I hadn't done before. I don't feel like on a technical level it was necessarily the biggest stretch for me, but it was more like I hadn't made a movie in quite a long time, and it was, it just had been a while since I'd made anything, and it was just getting together a new team. And I don't know, it's the first movie I feel like I made as an adult. I mean, when I made Grave Encounters, I was 25 or something like that. And a lot of the producing aspects were handled by other people. And we
Hmm.
were truly just the filmmakers for that. This movie, I was a producer, I was handling the money, I was handling all this other stuff. So most of the stuff that I learned had to do with the more of the production side.
Sure.
Um, on a technical side, it just got gave the opportunity to do things I've always wanted to do, which is like shoot old fake newscasts and stuff like that. Like that shit was really fun to do. And again, talking about allocation of resources, it's like, we have these news segments in the movie. Some of them are meant to look like they're from like the mid 90s. And it's like usually I feel like fake news segments are like not even part of the main unit. They'd be tossed in at the end. Like for us, they were like main unit days. We would spend like half the day shooting like 2 lines because those things are just important to me. And I never
Sure.
understand why like some huge giant movie, like $200 million movie, will be like incredible looking, and then it cuts to the crappiest fake news footage you've ever seen.
Yeah.
With like, where it's just like some guy and like there's a background or whatever, and you're like, this
Yeah.
doesn't look real at all.
Yeah,
I don't know how
totally.
close we got, but I feel like we tried to make that stuff as realistic as we could, because I just feel like, especially with news, we see the news
Mhm.
every day. Like there's such a good frame of reference. There's no reason why they shouldn't look at least half what credible.
Totally.
Exactly.
And I will never understand big budget movies not being able to do a decent Photoshop of putting the two actors together, like in like a picture from the past. That blows my
Big
mind.
gripe.
I
Big
Mhm.
know.
gripe.
I know. I know it's
Mhm.
it's a true thing. The devil is in the details. It all matters. It all matters.
Yeah.
Totally.
Mhm.
Um, so let's talk about Mr. Shiny for a second. Um, I guess what were your so in terms of your horror movie villains, like what's your Mount Rushmore of horror movie villains? Because Mr. Shiny is going to be haunting my dreams for a while. Like
For
what
sure.
what have you put on yours?
Oh God, let's see. I mean, all the classics. You got like your Hannibal Lecter. I certainly think John Doe from Seven is probably up there in terms of one of the most sadistic killers that we've gotten in cinema history. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like influences that were brought to this. Like, I think less so about like specific killers. I like definitely like True Detective was a big influence with
Mhm.
Sure.
this, you know.
What's it, the Blue King? What is it in that?
The Yellow
The
King.
Yellow King. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. I think Mr. Shiny is kind of like this amalgamation of like absorbing like pop culture, like serial killers, and then also like real world serial killers. I think if he was inspired by anything really, like those guys like Ted Bundy and stuff, they were all like sadists that were killing for like their own pleasure, whereas our guy is like driven by like this higher purpose, right? He's
Hmm.
like trying to achieve, like he's trying to, he's fucking with cosmic forces. And that to me is a lot more like someone like the Son of Sam killer who thought he was talking to his dog, or like there was this guy Herbert Mullen who was a serial killer in the 70s who was killing people because he thought if he didn't kill, earthquakes were going to destroy California, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
totally.
he was like these guys that were like driven by like this like this higher purpose, like they thought that they
Mhm.
were in touch with something. Was kind of the biggest inspiration for Shiny, I think. That and just trying to make something that was off-settling and a kind of serial killer that we hadn't quite seen before.
And
Yeah.
we love masks here, big mask fans.
Yes.
We rank our favorite masks all the time. Were there influences, whether from other movies or from cultural things, that you wanted that mask to kind of convey or portray or reflect?
Well, I know, it's interesting because the Jesse Clarkson who portrays Mr. Shiny also created that mask.
Oh,
He
cool.
Oh,
Yeah. He was
Interesting.
initially actually hired as a production designer. And then as we were like talking through the process of making everything, he like comes up to me and he's all, "Hey, what do you think about me playing Mr. Shiny?" And I was like, well, yeah, you have a really interesting look, and he's like 6 foot like 5. He's quite tall and like imposing looking. And I was like, maybe. And then he's like, well, I played killers before, and he had played a killer in this, I think, a James Franco movie called The Vault from a few years ago. He plays a killer with a mask. So I
Hmm.
checked that movie out, and I was like, oh, this guy can actually act. He actually can like do a character. So
Cool.
after I saw that, um, I was like, let's do it. And then we started talking about the mask. And the only direction I really gave him is I said, I want to incorporate the symbol of the 3 planet alignment that is you see throughout the movie. There's this
Hmm.
symbol. And so, that's just like mouth, 2 eyes, boom, done right there. But I know that Jesse said that his biggest influence was actually the movie Pink Floyd, The Wall. There's this
Oh.
where
Hmm.
there's these
Yeah.
weird like child characters during like the whole we don't need no education part. There's like these demented children that have these weird masks, and he was very inspired by that. Apparently, he was pulling from that. It's kind of like a clay face with just like these impressions of faces, which is kind of what we talked about. Is like the mask should be simple and it should be evocative of sort of like the shape of a person that's not fully formed or something.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, love that.
Very uncanny valley.
Very much
Very,
so.
yeah, super uncanny valley, yeah.
I guess like in terms of influences on making this film feel as realistic as possible, knowing, we did a little background research, knowing that, your father was a public defender, so like there's some influence in courthouse culture. I'm assuming that Brian wants me to talk about this because I also have some criminal justice experience in my career in a past life. So I'm curious, like, what other research did you have to do in order to like add to the realism of, navigating that whole system?
Well, in terms of inspiration, I think I was definitely, like I spent my childhood in like the public defender's courthouse area and like their office there in Orange County. So I very much got kind of this behind the scenes look at the criminal justice kind of system. And, it's very boring. It's just people working in offices mostly. It's very, it's people doing paperwork and stuff like that. And I think that informs the movie in that it doesn't try to I have utmost respect for law enforcement and people that work in that, but it doesn't glamorize it. It's not trying to make the cops into action heroes, necessarily or anything like that. I was trying to come at it from a very realistic, this is just people, this is their job, this is what they do. They're working in like this bureaucratic system. There's all this red tape you're constantly having to deal with and paperwork and like so I think that kind of informs tonally how I always approached it. And I think that just works great with horror because it's like you're trying to be as realistic as possible. And to me, that's just a horror story that's framed through the lens of like they're not you're really trying to keep it totally realistic and keep one foot in reality. I think it just makes it scarier, you know.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
As far as research, I think I just watched a lot of videos like interrogation videos with
Mm.
people a court, any kind of like a lot of press conferences and like kind of those kind of weird elements. Anything I could get my hands on that was the more boring side of it, like that was what interested me more than anything, I think, was the procedural side of the story.
Hmm.
Do you have a favorite like fiction police procedural that you watch just for fun on occasion, or is it mostly you would rather just listen to an actual true crime podcast?
Well, let's see. I mean, I love police procedurals. But the true crime show that I always went to was this one called Sword and Scale,
Mm.
which is pretty great. And Sword and Scale has got the first season at least is extremely dark, like some of the most dark shit I think I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like police procedurals. Anytime I'm put on the spot, my brain goes to mush.
Yeah.
Good.
Like, I've never seen one, right?
Right.
Police procedural, what's that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna ask you, unfortunately, another question that might have to pick your brain in that way,
My
but
brain. Okay, I'll try better.
absolutely. Well, in our podcast, we also play a couple of games. Should we do a Rotten Tomato, guys?
Oh
Do you wanna
yeah,
roll
we
with
could do that.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
As we are finishing up here, like I mentioned, we do play a Rotten Tomatoes game, but I wanted to ask, were there any recent horror movies that you have personally enjoyed? And then you can guess the Rotten Tomato score, and we'll give you that. Usually when we do an episode, we guess what the Rotten Tomato score is and look at the critics' consensus of it.
And
So
how
is
they're
there a
usually
favorite?
wrong.
Yeah, you're usually always wrong.
Something somewhat recent that I enjoyed.
Yes, something
Yeah.
recent.
Okay, so there was a movie, this is probably a little old now, but it's called In a Violent Nature. I think this
Oh,
was
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
year or so ago.
Mhm.
I got to watch that movie early on because I kind of, as a side job, I do trailer editing. And so I
Oh,
kind of
cool.
I worked
Amazing.
on that film, so I got to see it early on. And
very cool.
I love that movie. I loved what he's like aping on these films that Gus Van Sant did called like Elephant and Last Days. He's done a
Yeah.
couple of these movies where he like just follows people and
Mhm.
follows people for a really long time. And I immediately saw his influence and I was like, this is awesome, dude. This is yours to lose. And I just thought it was great. And then am I supposed to guess the Rotten Tomatoes? Because I can't.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's such a polarizing movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Right.
if I were to guess, ooh, I don't want to sound mean, but it's probably not that high just because of the polarizing nature.
That's
I'm
a
gonna,
good way to think about it. That's yeah.
Mhm.
and again, I don't know Rotten Tomatoes super well. I'm gonna go with like a 60%.
Great.
Okay.
That's
Do you
gonna
two
be my
have
guess.
do you two have guesses?
I know we did an episode on this and I forgot what it was.
Yeah, I
that's
forgot
fine.
what it was too.
So
Maybe
I'll
lower.
guess I'll go low too. I'm gonna do 56.
I'm
Jamie?
gonna do 67.
All right. This is a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, with 185 reviews. However, the audience score, as they call it, the popcorn meter, is only 45%, which is where that
Mm.
divisiveness totally shows its face.
Yeah.
But here's the fun one. What's in a Violent Nature rated on Letterboxd? So that's out of 5, with decimals. This one is always interesting.
Hmm.
Letterbox. I feel like Letterbox are probably going to be a bit more discerning or nicer of an audience, or probably just more fan base. So I'm going to say it's higher on average than the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm going to say, well, I don't know though. I say that, and that movie is very divisive. As much as I love it, and I know a few people that love it, I also know people that absolutely hate it, and it's the most boring movie they've ever seen. So that could certainly skew things. I'm gonna go with the boring, like I'm gonna go with like a 3. That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Okay. Oof. I'm gonna say 3.4.
Oh,
Okay.
you stole mine. I'm
Oh.
also gonna say 3-4.
Okay. It's a 2.7.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
shocking.
That's
I agree. Also because it has a fantastic like this. I would think that kill in that movie, the yoga one, like supersedes some people's thoughts.
That
on
kill's
it. But anyway,
iconic.
yeah,
Iconic. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that log kill myself. I think
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
that
yeah.
to me is the most disturbing thing I had seen in a movie in a long time. A guy's paralyzed and then he gets
Mm-hmm.
put through this machine. That's terrifying.
Yep.
Very much.
So one last question for you. What's a perfect horror trailer in terms of, I didn't know that you did that. That's very cool. And a lot
Yes.
of people say that like too much is spoiled in the horror movie trailers nowadays. Like to you, what is a, not necessarily a specific horror trailer, but what defines a perfect horror trailer?
Probably one that, doesn't give too much away, like I think I love it when movies will just do some kind of like tease, like a true viral tease, like that first little
Yes.
tease that Weapons did.
Mm.
To me, that's all you need. And I get it. I get how it works. Like the studios want to do bigger things to promote it and make it seem like it's something. But, to me, like the coolest, I guess it's not purely horror, but like the Cloverfield teaser that they did,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
that's the
Mhm.
best film marketing, I think, that I've seen personally. And it all comes down to if I don't know if other people respond to that, but to me as a film goer, that kind of thing gets me the most excited when I see some unconventional thing that's not just a 2-minute long trailer that shows you big swaths of the plot or whatever. It's when it just gives you this tease and you're like, what is the movie? I don't even know what this is. So probably something like that. I felt like the trailer
Yeah.
for the movie, and again, it's not super horror, but Companion, I think, unfortunately, that marketing gave a little bit too much away.
Totally
Yeah,
agree.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought that film was great, but it would have been probably more hit even harder if I didn't know everything going into it.
Exactly.
Completely agree.
Uh-huh.
So
Exactly.
we just talked about how you want something to make you feel before you go into it. Going back to Strange Harvest, what do you hope that people feel or think about coming out of your film?
I want them coming out of the film shaken to the core of who they are as people. I want to trigger some kind of response that people don't normally get in a horror movie, which is to kind of cross some boundary of safe space a little bit. that leaves people shaken and disturbed. I don't know if it's necessarily a movie that's going for a in-your-face jump scare, Conjuring style of effect, although we have a
Mhm.
few of those interspersed. I think it's more of a movie I made to try to really linger with you and to stick with you. And when you're going home from the theater on your way to your car, you're like looking around a little bit in a way that you
Mm,
maybe wouldn't have if it was just a more cinematic movie or something like that.
Sure.
absolutely.
And then Jamie, Nikisha, did you any other questions that you wanted to pull out?
No.
I guess my only other question is like, the time between your film premiering at the festival up to the release, like what kind of comes up? Like, how are you kind of like keeping it together? Like, what feelings are kind of coming up in that time period for you?
That are coming up with like the movie being released.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Just just really excited. I mean, I've never had a film that's gotten any kind of actual theatrical release, so this is all new territory for me, but
Mm,
it's really exciting. And it's like the way that any filmmaker wants their movie to be seen, is up on the big screen. I'm just like can't wait. I'm like a kid in the candy factory. I can't wait to go around town and go in some theaters and go in the back of the theater like a creep with sunglasses on and just be watching people's reactions. Like I'm super excited. It's like especially as a horror filmmaker, you make these things because you want to get a reaction. So I'm excited for people to see it, and I hope that it's very much a love letter to horror fans. It's packed with details and Easter eggs and all sorts of things to be discovered upon rewatches. But I also think it's a horror movie kind of for anybody. Like, I think grandma can throw this on and she'll be a little off put, but I think that she'll be able to make it through it because it does have like an accessibility to it at the same time.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we all really enjoyed it. It got amazing word of mouth at a Fantastic Fest last year. I hope everybody gets out to see it August 8th. Check out Strange Harvest. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're really happy to talk to you, pick your brain, and our butts are in seats for anything that you put out there. We've just enjoyed your work so much, and keep on going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. This has been great.
Thanks. Thank you.
Again, we just want to reiterate how thankful we are that Stuart could spend some time with us. It was a real pleasure talking to him. He truly is a real horror fan. Like, just could talk about this for hours, and we appreciate the time that we were able to talk about it. And again, August 8th. And if you are
Yes.
listening to this after August 8th, find it and watch it. I'll find you. Strange
Oh, no.
Harvest. It's a really good time. Yeah, thanks again, Stuart Ortiz. We keep
Yeah.
making movies.
Great.
Please.
Keep making those
Please.
movies. We're gonna keep seeing them. So that wraps up our episode of Strange Harvest. You can find us, as producer Brian has mentioned earlier, on all of the socials. Did you already say where they can listen to us, Brian?
No, I
Or-
didn't, but I can
okay.
do that.
Please.
Yeah, you can find us on any place where you get your podcasts. So YouTube, hi YouTube, where you can see Jimmy making hearts. And then Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank
Thank
you.
you.
And if there's any other directors out there that want to be interviewed by us, we're here and available.
We're here. We're ready.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.